Hi everybody. So today I'm going to show you how to make a dashboard in Tableau Public. So to do this, you've got to go to the Tableau Public website. If you just Google it, you'll see it come up right away. So just follow that link, sign up for an account. I'm going to be using the Tableau desktop app, but you can also do this on their web editor. The data we're going to be using are the data that we wrangled in the last lesson in the Power BI, and I'm sorry, not Power Query Editor. I'll put the link to that lesson below, and I'll also put a link to the CSV file that we're going to be using so that you can follow along. So the first thing we want to do, because we're going to be uploading a CSV file, is to go to text file here under connect. We could also upload different types, other kinds of files, like we can upload an Excel file, but this is delimited data. So we're going to be uploading a text file. We'll be clicking on that. And then wherever you have the file saved on your desktop, go ahead and click on it and click open. This file is called example_data.csv. Okay, so that's going to open up and it's going to look like this. It's going to show us the data that are in there. We have data on different countries, a country code for each country, a year, data on female labor force participation, GDP per capita, and some data on democracy, the polyarchy score from the VDEM dataset, which we're not going to be using today, but you're welcome to make some more visualizations with that. Once we're done with the lesson, or whenever you want, really. But the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to click on Go to Worksheet. So we'll click on Sheet 1, and that'll take us to a Tableau worksheet. And what we can do is rename it, and I'm just going to call this bar chart because that's what we're going to make on the first visualization here. And from this point, it's really just drag and drop. It's super easy. So we just need to decide what we want on the x-axis, what we want on the y-axis, and drag it in to the right fields. So in this case, we're going to be putting country names on the x-axis. So we'll go ahead and drag that up to columns. And we're going to be putting female labor force participation in the rows. Okay, and notice we get our bar chart right away. So before I go on, let me just say that I find it really helpful to think of columns as the x-axis and rows as the y-axis to start. And we can switch that around. Actually, we can go up here and we can swap rows and columns. Right? But I find it to be really helpful just to think of columns as X and rows as Y. So one thing you notice about this, it doesn't really make any sense. How do we have female labor force participation with a range of 0 to 2,000? It's supposed to be a percentage. So what we want to do next is we want to change the measure here in the rows. So we're not looking at the sum of female labor force participation across all the years for every country. What we want is an average value. So let's go ahead and change that to an average. And then we can tidy up the plot a little bit if we want. We can change the title of it by double clicking on that. And we can call it something like Levels of female labor force participation. Hit apply, hit OK. We can change the axis label if we want by clicking on that. Instead of calling it average FLFP, let's call it FLFP %. And then that just automatically updates. You can close it. For country name, you can leave that there. If you want to sort on country name, you can do that. So this will sort it in ascending value or in descending value. You can go ahead and play around with that if you want. I'm just going to go ahead and hide that field for now, just because we're not really going to be needing it for our analysis here. Okay, so that's our bar chart. The other thing we could do is we could filter by country name. So say we didn't want all of the countries here, we could go ahead and we could unselect, we could unselect all of the countries here by clicking none. And then we could also just go ahead and filter. Well, I can show you what it looks like. We can just go ahead and unselect everything, and we can just search for particular countries that we wanted. So like, let's say we wanted the BRICS countries. We could click on Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and we could hit apply, hit OK, and then our values are filtered, and we just have, the female labor force participation rates for those 5 countries. But I don't want to do that. I actually want to leave them all in there, and you'll see why in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and just remove that filter. But I just wanted to show you that you could do that if you wanted to filter out just to have certain countries in the plot. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit New Worksheet. And we're going to make this time a line chart. And for our line chart, what we're going to want is we're going to want the year on the x-axis. So let's go ahead and drag year up here to columns. And we want the level of female labor force participation in the rows or on the y-axis. So let's go ahead and drag that up there. And here we want to not just have like the sum of female labor force participation for all of the countries. We want to show the individual countries. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to take the country name and we're going to drag it here to color. Okay, so that every country, displays with a different color its trend for female labor force participation from 1997 to 2021. Okay. So it asks us here, do we want to filter this or do we want to just add all the countries, because it's going to look ridiculous with all of the countries. But we're going to go ahead and leave it as looking ridiculous, and we're going to have all the countries in there. So let's just add all members. It's warning us that that's going to look ridiculous, and it does. But we could go ahead and drag country code or country name back here into filter, right? And then we could go ahead and filter out the countries that we wanted to show the trend for, if we wanted to do that. But I actually don't want to do that. I want to leave all the countries in there. Again, you're going to see why in a little bit, but let's go ahead and change the title here. We're going to call it Trends in Female Labor Force Participation. Hit apply, okay. Let's change the y-axis label here to female labor force participation %. And again, we could sort on the year variable here, but let's not do that. Let's just go ahead and hide it for now. It tells us we have a lot of null values. We're just going to hide that for as well right now, that little warning. And we're going to move on to our next visualization, because I think that's all we have to do here. So next, let's go ahead and we'll make a map this time. And so for the map, the easiest way to do this is to pretend like we're making a histogram. So we're going to drag country name into columns or the x-axis, and we're going to drag female labor force participation into the rows on the y-axis, so it looks like a histogram. But then go over here to the show me pane, and instead of having the bar chart, let's go ahead and click on map. All right. There we go. Took a while, but it worked. So now we have our choroploeth map, and look, it automatically put the country name and female labor force participation down here into detail. It put the country name into detail, and it put the sum of female labor force participation into color. All right, it did that for us automatically, and it knew when we clicked on map that we wanted to have longitude and latitude, so it's smart enough to know essentially what we mean. So I find that the easiest way to go ahead and just generate a map with country names. It automatically recognizes the country names. It knows how to create a choroploeth map. It's very convenient. So that's the method I recommend. And from there, instead of having the measure be the sum, again, let's make it average female labor force participation for all the countries. And let's go ahead and we can click on color here, and we can change a few things, like if we want to edit the color rather than having it be the default blue scale, which is kind of nice, we could have it be orange or green or red or purple. Let's go ahead and choose purple and hit apply. Okay, and then we can change the title here to something more informative, like female labor force participation around the world, or whatever you want to call it. So there we go. Now we have a map, and let's change the sheet name also down here to map. And that looks pretty good. So now when we hover over the countries, the tooltip tells us essentially what this little field here that you see next to my pointy finger is called a tooltip, and that tells us, the average female labor force participation for that country. Okay. Now from here, let's go ahead and create one last visualization. This is going to be a scatter plot. So here we're going to do a scatter plot of GDP per capita, and we're going to put that on the x-axis, and then female labor force participation on the y-axis. And it kind of already knows that we want a scatter plot. It just automatically detected that. If it didn't, we could click on it. And then from here, what we want to do, because we want to tell it like what are the points going to represent, we need to take country code or country name. I'm going to suggest country code because it's shorter, and it'll display better on the map, and we can drag that into detail. And now we have a scatter plot. It's that easy. Okay, so now this looks a little bunched up over here because we have a lot of values, a lot of countries with very low per capita income. And so what we can do here is we can go ahead. Well, first of all, what we want to do is we want to change it to average again, just like with the other visualization. So let's go ahead and, instead of having sum, we're going to make sure we have averages. All right, and then from there we can right click on the axis, on the x-axis. We can hit edit axis, and then from here we can change the scale to logarithmic so it's more stretched out. But here we notice now that we have all the space over here because it's on a log scale. So let's uncheck include 0, and then that looks pretty good. Okay, last thing we want to do here is add a trend line. So if you just right click on the visualization and we hit show trend line, then we get a trend line, and then we can also select that and we can format the trend line. Let's see. Or if we edit it, let's see if we edit it. Then if we hit edit, then we can choose different types of trend lines. We can choose like a logarithmic, exponential, power, polynomial, and we can change the number of polynomials, and then it kind of thinks something zeroed down there, I think because of the null values. But anyway, so that's not very good. Let's just leave it as linear, but I just want to show you that that's an option if you want it. And then from here, we can also change the format of the trend line. So like, let's say we wanted it to be red, and let's say we wanted it to be a little bit bigger, and then let's say we wanted it to be less translucent. We can change the opacity of the trend line as well. So let's put it at like 66. It's a little more visible that way. And then again, let's just tidy this up a little bit more. We're gonna change the name of it to, let's call it wealth and female labor force participation. Apply. Okay, and then change the x-axis label, or y-axis label rather, to FLFP percent. Okay, and then instead of average GDP per capita, let's just call it GDP per capita. Right, okay. All right, so I think that we can go ahead and hide the nulls, the null value warning, and I think that's it for now. Let's go ahead and change this to scatter plot. That's it in terms of the visualizations. We're not done yet because we want to turn this into a dashboard. So next thing we want to do is go down here and hover over New Dashboard and then click New Dashboard. And then once we do that, we get a dashboard, okay? And you want to change this. You could fool around with it, see what looks good on your screen. But let's say we want, I think this height looks pretty good, but we want it to be wider over here. So let's go ahead and change that to 1400, I think would look good. And let's just change this to 900 here. And so now we have a wider space to work in, okay? That's for the max value. So just going back there again, just change the maximum size. I didn't touch the minimum size there, okay? Okay, so now next thing I think you want to do is add some containers because that makes it easier to organize the visualization. So I'm going to go ahead and add two vertical containers. So clicking here on vertical container and dragging it over. Now I'm going to go ahead and let me hide the show me thing. Click on more options, and then I'm going to put this as floating, and that way I can adjust the size of the container. I'm going to put it down here, and then I'm going to stretch it out down there. All right, and then I'm going to add one more vertical container. You know what? I think, well, yeah, let me try to add one more vertical container up here. Again, let me change it to floating, and now I'm going to stretch that out. And yes, there we go. So I have two containers pretty well aligned. I think the bottom one might be a little bit bigger, but I'm just going to leave it for now. I'm not going to be too OCD about this. I just want to show you basically how it works. So what you do now is you see your 4 visualizations that we just made, and it's really easy. Just take your bar chart, drag it into the bottom container, take your line chart, drag it in next to that. Okay, now it's showing you every country name up here. We don't need that legend, so we can just go ahead and delete it, and now we can adjust the size of these 2 visualizations as we see fit, right? Into the top container, let's drag our map. Okay, did it go into the actually it looks like what happened there is let's remove the map. It looks like our top container is no longer there for some reason. So let's go ahead and add back the vertical container. I'm not actually sure exactly what happened there with that container. And let's make it floating again. And let's, yeah, space it out here. Okay. Let me go ahead and put the map in there. Okay, and then let's put the scatter plot in there next to it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this legend. There we go. I'll go ahead and finish this up. Basically, what I want to show you next is just that you can use this map now as a filter, okay? And this creates a nice basic, you know, Tableau dashboard where you can click on different countries and it shows you the values for that country. It basically uses the map as a filter. And then if you hit Control, click, you can select more than one country. So let's select the BRICS. We have Russia, we have China, we have India. Let's go over here and select Brazil. And let's also select South Africa. Okay, and now we have a nice visualization where we have trend lines, a bar chart, a scatter plot, and a map for those countries. There's other ways that we can actually select things. We can use like a rectangular select tool, or we can use a circular select tool if we want to select, let's say, a group of countries up here, let's say in Northern or Europe or something. We can select on them, and then we have a nice picture of levels and trends and female labor force participation, and looks like Europe, North America, and it also included Russia. And then you can unselect Russia or unselect countries again by hitting Control and then click. Okay, and that's all pretty automatic. Okay, and then from there, the last step here would just be to save this. We can, with the Tableau Public app, we can only save to Tableau Public. You have to upgrade if you want to save locally. So don't put anything sensitive here, like financial information or personal finances or something like that. Only put like data that you're willing to have be public if you're using Tableau Public. But we can go ahead and save it, and we can give it a name. It's going to ask us to sign in. And yep, I'm already signed in, I believe, so I should just be able to save this as, let's say, FLFP dashboard. I'll go ahead and save it. And now it's going to take us there and show us our dashboard online. Eventually. Okay, here we go. All right, so that's it, and let's just click to make sure everything's working. And it is. And that's how you make a dashboard with Tableau Public.